Hello, how are you?
I'm okay. How are you doing?
Oh my gosh, I'm so good. It's been way too long, friend. Way too long.
It's wild. Like the
Mhm.
difference between summer and winter here is pretty spectacular. But I do remember the last time we were talking, I was like walking around in t-shirts, and it was all warm and bright and sunny, and the days were long, and it seems like an
Right.
eternity ago.
I know it does. It's so good to have you up and have a chat. How have you been? You been good?
Yeah, okay, not too bad.
Yeah,
Ups and downs.
I feel it. Trust me.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you
Yes,
do.
I know, right? Life, like whenever you get like everything, you feel like everything's going good. Life's like, no, 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 no. Gotta keep you
Right.
on your toes, you know?
Right. And it's almost like when you just feel like you're starting to get a grip on things, and it's like something else hits you, out of nowhere, something you
Yes,
could not have expected. And you think,
right.
how does this keep happening to me? What am I doing wrong?
I feel it. I feel
Yeah,
it.
I
And
bet.
usually it's just like outside sources too, of course, like, and then you throw kids in the mix and
Oh,
that
yeah.
changes everything, you know?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And then you got other human lives that you're responsible for. And that is like, that's when those thoughts, like what, especially with, like for people who don't know, I'm pretty sure we only got seven, but my daughter has been struggling mental health wise for many years and just like kind of boiled over. And she ran away and it was super scary. And, she's home safe and we're trying to get her the help that she needs. But I mean, that's the other thing is like, just roadblocks after roadblocks when you are trying to do the right thing. It's a tough world, I'll tell you that much. But yeah,
I
so
I felt for you so much during that. I really did. I mean, like you said, I mean, life is hard when everything's going well.
mm,
Do you know what I
right.
mean? I
Yes.
mean, it's not like hard, but it always kind of feels like, man, got to keep going on the treadmill and things like that. And man, when something like that sort of scale comes into your life, that's just kind of terrifying. I felt
Yes.
for you so much. I really, really did.
Well, I
And it kind
appreciate
of,
you.
I kind of felt kind of helpless. Do you know what I mean? Just like, ah,
Hey,
there's
Jason.
somebody
Go
over the
ahead.
other side of the world, and it's just I wanted to get my boots on and get out in the streets, and it's like the urge was so strong. And that's before I even start. That's for me. That's before I even start thinking about what it must have been like for you. So I mean, I just felt for you so much during all of that, and
Yeah, and y'all
I'm
are amazing. I'm just telling you. Like I really could not have gotten through so much of that without you and Huggy and Britt and just all of y'all just really honestly. Like like I was saying earlier, the friendships that I've made on here, even though we haven't met personally, like in the flesh, you are still my friend and I consider you guys my friends, and that just touches my heart. And you all the way over there, right? And the other side of the world, I'm really grateful for real. And I appreciate you.
Well, I'm glad you felt like it, gave you at least some kind of support. I mean, that's good to
Hmm.
hear.
Yes.
To know that, I suppose, to know that people are thinking about you, gives you a little bit of validation to your feelings, and if your feelings are validated, then it just kind of helps you work through things a little bit easier. It's one
Hmm.
less thing on your plate, I guess. So
Right,
so that's
right.
good.
Yes, yeah. Support definitely lightens the load. And of course, like, because of why we're here anyways, talk about our
Go for it.
beliefs, right?
Good. Go
Okay.
on. You can do
Okay,
it.
yes, I know. But when I do go through those kind of things, and throughout my life, not just with my daughter, with myself, I honestly, what gives me the strength to just push on has always been, before I met God, no, but when I met God, that is the only thing that keeps me, you know, grounded, I guess. And when like just not even with my daughter, but when my parents both died, in the same year and all of the things that have happened throughout my life, like I was just talking with a friend too about this. Like I don't understand how I got through anything before I knew God. And I feel like that's why I was always stumbling around life and always like, even though I was going through that hard time, like there is a like almost like a set strong knowing that everything's going to be okay if you lean on God. And I didn't have that before. So, like, even when I did go through those really hard times, like, even in the silence when nobody was there, you know what I mean? Like, that was the only way that I got through. And I'm like, how do people? Because I don't remember how I just feel like we stumble around when we don't have that direction from God. How do you feel about that?
Um, I guess if I felt like I had to rely on something I didn't know was there, I would be in a lot of trouble. And it's fascinating the different perspectives, isn't it? Like, I
Mhm.
mean, I guess it's not really something that I understand. So I mean, I suppose I'd ask you. You just feel like you didn't have any kind of tools to deal with the things that come up in life. I mean, I think people do need something, right?
Mm,
But whether that is some kind of belief or just some kind of process, I guess
mm.
is the difference. So you just genuinely feel like you didn't, at that time at least, you didn't have any tools to deal with the things that come up in your life, those challenges.
I felt like all of the tools that I would go to ultimately were damaging, I guess. And of course, I don't
Interesting.
really have a good other than like being on substances and being crazy, and then I found God. So I don't have like a time in my life where I was a little bit more, I guess, secure in ways in my life without God. Okay. So I don't have anything to base that off of, to be honest. Like, so my
Sure.
coping mechanisms throughout my life was always, substances or instant gratification kind of things. I also, I was diagnosed with, hey, Tiny. I was also diagnosed with ADHD at 14, but had no idea
Yeah.
what that meant. And then really stumbled around with having, ADHD and then not giving any resources. Like, so I definitely, as
Yeah.
an adult, know that I was, self-medicating and all that kind of stuff. So, when I did find God, though, even though like now I know why I was the way I was, but this kind of information that I now have about neurodivergency is very new. It's only since I got on this TikTok app. What helped me through all of those struggles that I, even before I knew what they were, was God, was leaning on God when I would have like my mind would be going crazy and I didn't know why and it wouldn't shut up. Like that was my always my comfort that I could go to, or like was always my once I met God, I guess I am very blessed to have like I've heard other believers talk about this, and I never really thought about this much, but that God doesn't always come to us in like, the Holy Spirit, form, and we have this incredible encounter. Like that actually doesn't happen with everybody, at first. And for me, that happened. And so when I met God, I like physically had an encounter with him that made me not, I didn't even read the Bible yet. I didn't even know anything about God really yet, except for the little stories you hear in America, like that everybody hears, But I didn't know God, but I knew God in a personal way before I even knew about the, anything in the Bible. So I think I have a little bit of a different experience with God. I think I needed that to believe because I am such a skeptic. And when I was in that desperation, I called out to God. And if he was real, to come and, show me that he is real, that he physically showed me he was real, I couldn't deny it. And from that exact day, I've always not been able to deny it because of that physical, you know, proof that God gave me, to be honest. And I feel like we can all get that, but I feel like that was something that I was blessed with that not everybody is blessed with at first,
Mm.
I guess. Did I
I thought
make any
interesting.
sense?
No, none whatsoever. Start again.
Okay, okay, got you.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So, I saw an interesting comment from Jason, which
hmm
actually, funnily enough, is something that I was going to touch on as well.
Oh,
So for
got you. Okay.
me, um, like being kind of the process, the tools for getting through life. I mean, the stuff that just comes up every day, when you're feeling tired, when it's kind of hard to keep going, or you're just feeling annoyed with people for no good reason, things like that.
Mm.
um, I simply use rationality, and like the more I learn about it, the more comfort that I get from it. It is so clear to me a lot of the time. A lot of the time, it's not.
hmm
And I'm not saying that it even comes naturally to me. It definitely doesn't. And like I'm no spring chicken. I don't mind telling you, right? And
You're
so
silly.
these kind of learnings have come to me
hmm
late in life, unfortunately. I would have loved to. I mean, I suppose it's very corny. It's very cliche. I'd love to know what I know now when I was like 20. you
Right,
know
of course, right? Yeah.
at least a little bit of it, but I was a
hmm
dumb kid, and very sheltered in a lot of ways as well. And so I suppose there's a lot of things that I kind of had to learn the hard way. And
Mm.
in the end, and absolutely looking outside of myself, to things like art and inspiration and nature, things like that are really important to me for just the human side of me, which needs feeding, I think. Might be a bit of a corny way of putting it, needs feeding. I don't know. I think just this stuff is good for us, so it helps
hmm
us to think through things. It helps to use rationality and things like that. But what Jason was saying there was like, that basically, I think what if he was up here, he'd probably say to me that, well,
You
that's
can
just
come on
God.
up, Jason.
You're just using God, but it's just you're calling it something else. Do you know what I
hmm
mean? But
I
I
kind
mean,
of
I
agree. I
guess,
was kind of thinking
yeah,
that
okay,
just
that's
because
fine.
I feel like all good comes from God, so that's kind of where I'm getting that.
Right.
hmm
Okay. Well, let me ask you then. Does that
hmm
work the other way around?
All bad comes from what? God too?
No. I
Oh.
mean, let's say my core is, and this would be far too simplistic. Let's say my
hmm
core is rationality. Okay.
hmm
And let's say I'm saying to you, well, you're using rationality. You're just calling it God.
Oh, I see. I see. Um, I would say that um I do agree. Like when we practice something, it becomes almost second nature. So maybe that doesn't come second nature at first, but with practice comes perfection, that saying. So I feel like um, with anything like that, and you say that rationale, I would feel like I wasn't rational when God stepped in and started making those rational decisions for me. So, like, And I'm not a stupid person. Okay. Granted, like I'm not, so I do understand that there is like, I believe that I'm saved without works, but I also believe that for things to work, you also have to make steps in that. So I feel like, with the practice of, going to God and constantly looking to God for my help or to when I'm annoyed with people or when there's a situation to instead of looking inside myself, I guess I go to God. And I feel like when I do that, I get better answers. Not saying that I'm perfect and I do that all the time. I look inside myself too and tend to get like, oh, but I did this and I did that. And, yes, I took the steps, but I believe that when we are granted good things and any blessing that we have, like, is from God. I heard a quote many years ago that stuck with me that like when we are on the earth that people who are going to go to heaven, this is the closest place we're going to get to hell, and for people who are going to go to hell, this is the closest we're going to get to heaven. So with that being said, I feel like anything that we experience here that is good is has to be from God. Like that's just the only in my worldview. Of course, I understand not in yours.
I'm smiling like
Hmm.
crazy.
Why?
let me tell you why,
Why are
right?
you smiling? Okay, tell
You
me.
when you're talking about the your I guess you'd probably call it a journey into
Hmm.
religion. You're describing mine so well, and you're
Hmm.
probably describing it an awful lot better than I would. Um, but for me, it's just rationality, and
Hmm.
I don't. I mean, I couldn't. I can't use something like truth is incredibly important to me. And this is something that I'm trying to figure out is why it's so important to me. It
Hmm.
just started, maybe about 10 years ago, something like that. 15 years ago, it started becoming incredibly important to me. Truth, honesty, authenticity, um, and it was difficult transition for me to make. And it's when I started looking into things like religion, things like that, because I never really did before. I was
Okay.
what you would call an apatheist, right? Growing up in Ireland, pretty secular,
Hmm.
but surrounded by
Hmm.
churches. 86% of churches, sorry, are of schools in Ireland are Catholic.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Um,
know that. Gotcha.
oh, big time, yeah, yeah, yeah. Now,
Okay.
by most standards, they're very secular, at least nowadays.
Hmm. Hmm.
But so Um, I didn't look into it much, and I expected when I did start looking into it, I expected I suppose the evidence faith conflict to be much stronger. But I could not figure out. I was astounded at the reasons that people believed. So now, I mean, I would definitely say that. I mean, I don't know if some people call it atheist, some people call it agnostic, whatever. I say I'm not aware of any reason that to believe that any gods exist, and people can call me whatever they want, just don't call me late for dinner. And
Seven.
but
So I
I
have
I
a real
just
quick question just to
do
interject
go
because
for
I
it.
do have a question. I know that
And if, by the way, if you think I'm talking shit, you know me. I'm not going to get offended.
no, you're fine. No, I love having conversations with you. Um, I definitely have you, I guess my question is because I believe that a big part of our relationship with God is to, when we actually have one and seek Him. Do you feel like you've ever gone to God and actually asked Him to prove Himself to you with like, not in a condescending or doubtful way, like actually be like, if you're real, I need you to prove this. Have you ever gone to God in that way?
Interesting question. So I'm going to answer that two ways. Once as
Okay.
the apatheist, and once as the non-believer. So
Okay.
as the apatheist, there were definitely times where I screamed in desperation. Um, so without a doubt, yes, 100%. And as a non-believer, I would have to say to you, well, which God?
Mm,
Can I? I mean, if you're asking me to go to your God and ask them to prove themselves to me, well, somebody else, somebody standing beside you is going to say, well, do that with my God. And I genuinely believe if I work hard enough at it, I can make myself believe. I do believe that. I know most atheists, and there's a lot of nuance to this argument, I think.
hmm
And I think all theists and definitely most theists and probably most atheists are far too black and white on this, which I hate.
mm, mm,
They say, well, you can't choose your beliefs. I don't think it's as simple as that. I think you can convince yourself over time. And I think I could convince myself of your God, right? The problem is, I can probably convince myself of all 3,000 other gods too.
mm.
And that's
That's a good
so when I'm
point.
starting from that point, like
Mm,
what am I supposed to do when you stand in front of me and say, well, if you really, really, really work hard enough at it, you can believe in the God that I believe in, and I agree with you. But that's what I
mm.
see that as a problem. I see that as a problem because I believe that I can do the same with all 3,000 other gods.
It is a problem. And you're like completely bringing stuff up that I've been, this is just something I believe just in my research and then going to churches is, yeah, I call it cotton candy religion. And I think a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
people, and a lot of people in church and a lot of people that walk away is because they've convinced themselves instead of actually trying to seek God, they try to convince themselves that it's real. So we're still, in that sense, stepping in our own way because we're still relying on ourselves. And I don't mean that people are doing this consciously. I think they're actually doing it subconsciously in a way. Maybe some, but like I really feel like that is part of the reason and the big thing that Jesus was teaching about religion is that you can, you know, phrase the whole Bible. You can, memorize a million scriptures and know the right things to say without ever truly knowing God or ever stepping outside of your way so God can come in and show you who he is. Instead, and this I struggled, even when, and so like even with my experience with God and then truly knowing God is real, okay, I still got in my way so much, and then thinking about when I didn't believe in God, like if you're in this, stance of your life that you are the ultimate decider and that you can, I don't know what I'm trying to say, to be honest, I'm kind of
It's
losing
okay.
it,
Yeah, yeah, go for it.
but
Doesn't matter.
what I'm trying to say is that, that I think, yes, you're right, you could. I 100% believe that anybody can force themselves to believe anything. I mean, it's also a known like tactic for abuse or torture. Very much like you can make somebody believe something, 100%. You can make yourself believe something. But I think that belief and knowing God is still two different things, like it says in the Bible too that, that the demons believe in Jesus and God, but that doesn't mean that they know him, that they have a relationship with him. So I think that you can be Christian. You can do all the right things and still never know God and still, never truly I, I live for the Lord, it's just all works based kind of thing. And so I guess, are you getting what I'm laying down a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. So what
Okay,
you're saying
okay.
is that those are different things. So if I was to
hmm
really work hard at it and convince myself of the existence of, let's
Oh,
take your God for example, right?
can I say one
Then
more
that is
thing? real quick,
Do
because I remember where I was going with that, because you said you have been seeking truth or wanting truth for like the last ten years. This is what I really wanted to touch base with you anyways on, because I believe that we were made to want to know truth. I believe that God made us that way to know the real truth. And I believe that if you tried to convince yourself of every religion, that eventually you would come to the conclusion that God of the Bible is true. Now, with that being said, I do go ahead. With that being said, go
I get
ahead.
you.
Okay. I just wanted to interject with that before I forgot.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, my mind works like a bicycle with no tires on a bumpy road, a little bit like that as well. So
Okay, great,
we're
great.
good.
Then we're on the same road. That's always good.
um, So yeah, so what you're saying is
Mm.
the convincing yourself.
Ooh.
So let's say, assuming everything else is wrong, and really absorbing myself in the life and just dedicating myself to being kind of spoken to by the people around me who are, very much believers and so on. So that kind of one
Mhm.
direction influence, that's not is what you're trying to say. Sorry, what you are saying. I think, if I have it right,
Okay.
and please correct me if I don't, is that that's not the same. So knowing God is different.
Hmm.
Is that it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I really think
So
so. Mhm.
do you think that, um, one, do you think that I could say the same thing about rationality? And do you think that people with beliefs in gods who are contradictory to yours would feel the same way?
Hmm. Um, I think that I think people with so I haven't talked to many people with other gods explain their relationship with God as being personal. A lot of other religions, from what I know about it, is that it's very work-based, very, like we said, very religion-based instead of relationship-based. And I truly believe that's what makes, you know, Christianity so much different is when you do get to the root of it. In my belief, and I feel like you can really only get to this root when you have God in your life. Like, I don't feel like we can read the Bible without God in our life and get the full perspective of it. I think the root is that God created us to have a relationship in the very beginning. You know what I mean? Like, that is what we were created to do, to have. And when sin entered, it completely severed us from that relationship. Hence, why the story went on to have Jesus. And the reason why he had to die was so the Holy Spirit at this point can come to us and we can then have that relationship again, in a sense. And then, so that is where I feel like there is a huge difference. I think that we can have religion and have no relationship with God at all. And just
Hmm.
because I've met a lot of people like that, to be quite honest. And how you know that people are like that is they avoid the hard topics. And that's where, like, that, especially in America, is that fluffy religion, that cotton candy religion is like so much for so many years have been avoiding the real God too, at that, where that's where like these conversations come in, was like, why does the Bible say this, and why is all this horrible stuff in the Bible, but you're saying your God is real and good? But the churches don't even teach on any of this, so Christians don't even understand, I don't think, even really the God that they are serving, because they don't have a relationship. They truly only have religion.
You're a bit of a rebel Christian, I think, aren't you?
I think a little bit, but I've always been a rebel, so
Well,
it's all
I think that may be why we
good.
get on so well. But
Mhm.
like just hearing you talking about the cotton candy Christians and things like that. I mean, it's so interesting. Solo's here.
Hi,
I
Solo.
heard Solo was up. Solo was up on it.
How are we?
Hey, Solo, how you
Good,
doing?
good.
Solo was up on a Christian panel earlier on, and it was
Mm,
so hostile. It was so hostile,
terrible.
and uh, I don't know, did Solo leave or was he dropped? But as soon as he was off the panel, they were just absolutely misrepresenting what he was saying, and I was trying to very calmly say correct them, and then the hostility was directed towards me, and I mean, I have no problem in a lot of ways when people have different perspectives. People are, we're humans. We're going to have vastly different perspectives a lot of the time. But the ability to have these conversations is incredibly important. And I'm really sorry that I
Hmm.
missed you up on Jason yesterday because
Oh, no worries.
I only caught like the last 10 seconds or something. But
No.
I know from the way he was reacting to you, you were
Mhm.
giving him the full cara. You were giving him the full treatment. It's like,
I try
you know
everywhere I
what?
go.
Maybe, yeah, right. You're spreading the Kareness, and
The
like
Karen.
but straight away afterwards,
Mhm.
he was like, and like no shade on you, Jason. I know you have your thing, and I love you definitely without a doubt. But like he was like
Jason's a
atheists are
good dude.
miserable. They have no meaning, no purpose to their lives, and it
Mhm.
was such a jarring transition. And I just think it's incredibly important that we need to be able to have these conversations.
A hundred
And
percent.
I congratulate you for upholding that standard. And I hope that I can kind of carry on to at least trying to do that. And I know Solo is really, really, really strong on that as well.
Mhm.
He's such a he really, really tries to understand other people's perspectives, and that's just let's just start there, right? Wherever it goes
Mhm.
from there, let's just start there. And that should be the baseline standard. It really should. Just being able to, at least being interested in
Russell,
understanding other
Jason.
people.
Yes, agreed.
What was
Russell, you're funny.
interesting about the live that I was in earlier that you're
Mm,
mentioning is that they said, well, this conversation doesn't seem to be going anywhere, so we need to get on to Bible study. And so then I dropped and said, okay, see you guys later, have a good one. And then they just spent the next 15 to 20 minutes talking about me, and I was just like, well,
mm.
am I in the Bible? Maybe I should go back and read it again.
Oh my goodness. I trust me, you guys already know, like one of the biggest shocks that I had coming into this side of TikTok was the sheer amount of Christian hostility. I was literally in shock. It really is disheartening that so many people, and I mean, like, honestly, and I just want to shout out Jason because I know that when I first got on this app, I really kind of was like, ugh, on the way that, Jason communicated. And I do feel like he has made improvements and had said sorry where is needed. And I think that's what we're called to do. Like, we're not going to be perfect, and Christians are not going to be perfect. But what we're supposed to do is represent God the best that we can. And sometimes that is, saying sorry when we are wrong, etc., which we should do as decent human beings either way. But yes, that hostility, and that is where I'm going to say that some of these people that are on this app, and I'm no judge, but I'm just saying with my own experience, they simply just know religion. They do not know God because I do not see how some of these people, and I don't really know names, I'm horrible with names, but I have stumbled into lives where Christians are cuss it. I have seen more Christians cuss out people than I have seen atheists or non-believers cuss out people. I'm going to be real honest. I mean, even P Mars, when he was on my panel and he's Christian, cussed me out. So, I mean, like, I have literally seen more hostility from Christians, and I'm putting that in quotation marks because I don't know. I'm supposed to see the fruits of the Spirit through a true Christian. And if you're acting like that, I can't say that you are.
Well,
And that's just my
well,
opinion.
do you want me to swear at you a bit just to balance it out, or?
No, no, no. I'm just kidding. I mean, swear all you freaking want, but I'm
Well,
just
like
saying, like,
I'm not trying to say. I'm not. By the
you're
way, I'm not
funny.
trying to say that atheists in this space are, are perfect or
Of
anything
course
along
not.
those
Right.
lines. I have to say, I'm not trying to say that at all. Um, and there's a lot of work to do there. And I do try and be balanced about when I call people out, and I try to be kind of Socratic as well. I'm probably not as good at calling out atheists as I am about calling out theists.
Mm.
I have got myself into trouble with atheist panels by calling them many swear words in chat, just
Well,
for being irrational, right? I mean,
hmm
I just feel like it's easier to change somebody's mind, or even better, it's easier to understand somebody when you're sitting down beside them having a drink than when you're throwing rocks at
right.
them over a fence, right?
Of course.
And it's just so simple. So if that's not your objective, to understand somebody and potentially change their mind, well, what the fuck are you doing here? Do you know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Most definitely. And especially as a Christian. I mean, because that's literally what we are called to do is share the word. And how is anybody going to listen to that if you are insulting them too? I guess that's another big thing that I see just on both sides is like so many insults. And definitely see this on the atheist side too, with more of the harsher lives, you know what I mean? And it's just like belittling people because of their beliefs or non-beliefs, I don't think is right. And I see that happen a lot is just the conversation starts out by like belittling each other, and like how in the world are you going to have any type of productive conversation if it starts off like that? So that's another thing I've noticed too, for sure. And that's why I respect you guys, because here I feel like we can actually have a conversation where we can benefit, and at least, not feel like crap afterwards. That's always a plus.
Yeah, not feeling like crap is usually a win.
Right. Yeah.
And like, I mean, I'm not sure that you and I could possibly disagree more on, in terms of theism. I'm really
hmm
not sure that we could. So, and you know what? I honestly think that audiences are responding to respectful conversations because,
hmm
and I think the reason for that is because they're productive, right? I think
Right.
people are actually listening to learn now, possibly a little bit more.
hmm
Maybe I'm absolutely crazy about this, but I
Just
feel like
hopeful,
I'm seeing a
hopeful.
bit. Yeah, well, maybe hopeful, maybe hopeful.
Right. Gotta
I
keep the
feel
hope.
like I'm seeing a trend where people are
hmm
appreciating the conversations which are, um, it is somebody desperately, sorry, actually engaging and trying to understand the other person's perspective. Because when somebody is doing that, it helps the audience understand the perspective. So,
hmm
and when it's just kind of shouting, when it feels like somebody's just trying to win, you no longer have, for me at least, you no longer have an awful lot of faith that they are working towards truth anymore. It feels like they're trying to work towards, the win, basically.
Right. Of
Or
course.
like you said, belittling the other person.
hmm Yeah, definitely. I agree.
Go ahead, Solo.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's up,
I, I,
Solo? Good to see
I
you,
said,
friend. It's been a while.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I started to notice this sort of pop up even before I went to on the TikTok app. I joined TikTok around 2020, like a lot of other people did when there was,
hmm
the the lockdown, and we were like, well, what do
Mhm.
we do now? That Facebook is getting boring. But even on like looking on YouTube before I came to TikTok, you see these videos of these content creators, and it always has a picture of somebody else, making them seem as if they're like highly photoshopped. They're really well done, and it's
Mhm.
meant to grab your attention, being like, this guy is wrong, or watch this guy get debunked. And it's just like, what is the purpose of me watching this video? If that's what you're trying to do, then well, that's kind of boring to me, because
Mhm.
everyone is right at some point, or we're all wrong at times. That's just what it means to be, a human. And so if we're just putting that on showcase, it's like, that's just kind of boring to me. I'm more interested in people who can sit down and be honest with each other, and maybe get to a point where they
Mhm.
say, you know what, that's a good question, and I don't know the answer.
Right. I agree. I agree. And do you think that having productive conversations, even if we don't believe in the same thing, can, you know, be good for humanity?
I'm sorry, I just got distracted
You're
because
fine.
looks like, with your background
What?
there, it looks like Jesus
Hmm.
is walking on water, but you're like coming out of it.
Yes, I
Like,
know. I'm coming out of the water. I love it. Actually, isn't that cool? Look, I'm like in a pool right now with Jesus.
he's like,
Uh,
he's walking
right?
away from us. He's walking away from
No,
us. I hope you all.
no, no,
He's like,
no,
I'm
no. He's making
not
a
in.
way for us, Solo. He's making a way. He's going to make that way for us. Don't you look at this negative. It's all about
I,
perspective, too. That is something I've learned in life. It's about how we look at things.
he can do. He can go. He can lead the way. I'm just going to take a boat because
I mean, he can calm the waves too. So, just
so
saying.
I think we've covered, and I'm not directing your
Hmm.
live, of course.
No,
But
you're
in the
fine,
sake of
Solo.
having a good conversation here, I think we've
Hmm.
established that we're nice folk who just want to have that dialogue. And I'm interested in knowing
Hmm.
is what this relationship is. Like, when I think of a relationship with any person, I think, look, we both have things that we don't understand about each other. We learn from each other. And that's why we have this relationship where we get to know each other. But when I think about a relationship with a being like God, it starts to not seem like a relationship. And maybe you could describe it in a way that maybe makes more sense to me.
Sure, I hope so. Because I think that this is like the most important part of God is the relationship that we can have with him. And at first, I will say it is foreign. And it is hard sometimes, just like when you meet a new person, you go on your first, I don't want to do like a date kind of thing because I'm weird about, like, I don't view Jesus that way. But, like when you go and you meet somebody for the first time and you're hanging out, like, it can be kind of awkward. You don't know what possibly, this person is like. And that is just like you would get to know somebody in real life, I feel like is the same way you can get to know God. So that would be spending time with them, just like a human being. You go and you have conversations. And I know that having one-sided conversations is a really that's where the awkwardness comes in at first. That was for me anyways. It was kind of awkward because I didn't know how to listen to God yet. I didn't know how he communicated. And that's the same as like a real person in real life. When you start knowing somebody, you start learning how they communicate. Not everybody communicates the same. This is God as well. Bye, Jason. It was good to have you. Have a wonderful day. But so for a relationship for me, when I started my relationship with God, it was a lot of getting to know him. It was a lot of, yes, reading the Bible, but also for me praying. When I say I pray, and I feel like this is what it should be for everybody. That's like just having a conversation, just like you would with a person. The only thing is with God, we got to listen a little bit more than a person that's here on earth. This is at least my own, experience with God is that, the listening was the hardest for me, learning how God was communicating with me, but also I feel like God communicates with us even if we don't believe or before we believe. So that is just learning how God has been communicating with you. And for me, God communicates with me in like silent moments through calming my thoughts because I do have ADHD. So my thoughts can go crazy and I'm thinking even when I'm praying and talking to you guys, I'm still thinking about a million other things. When I am talking to God and I learned through, praying and stuff like that, he quiets my thoughts and I'm able to just kind of focus on one thing. And then I know that is how God is talking to me. He wants me to focus on this because this is how he's talking to me. He also talks to me because I'm a person who really doubts and I need a lot of confirmation, even to this day. Not that I doubt God, I doubt what he's telling me now more than anything is like I doubt my own thoughts too. Like, is that me? So I still have to practice on listening to God. Just like my dude that I've been with for 10 years, we're still learning to communicate and how to communicate better. And I feel like that's the same way with God. So the way that you treat a human relationship, I feel like you have to treat God in that way. It's just more listening than talking when it comes to God, I guess. Like it's more, and then the confirmation, let me just touch on that real quick, is confirmation for me is when I am not sure I'm getting the right answer of is this coming from God or my own thoughts, what way do I need to go? Those confirmations come in so many different ways, whether that just be something that I hear on, the radio or a conversation I have with somebody that brings something up completely off topic, but has to do with that confirmation um, through a video that I may watch or just anything like that. By 7, it was so good to talk to you. I'll talk to you later. I'll definitely be live on Saturdays, hopefully way more now. Life settled down. It
Well,
was good
I can
having you.
yeah, I can stay up. I just got a call. I'm back off it again,
Okay.
so I
Oh,
can
okay.
stay up
Got
if
you.
that's okay.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Stay up for sure. So yeah, so that's kind of like with me personally, but I do know that God talks to everybody, differently as well. Just like you have a relationship differently with different people, that is the same way. So how God talks to me may be different for you. And that's where the listening and the constant just spending time with God comes into learning who he is. I hope that makes sense. A little bit, anyways.
Yeah. So when you talk about your particular role in the relationship, it sounds like a relationship. You know, you're
Mhm.
speaking to him as though you would someone else. You're trying to understand. You're trying to be a good listener. It's just difficult for me to understand what it means for God to have a relationship with us.
Mm,
Like, what is it that God is learning about us? In what way do we share something, in the same way that we can have that relationship? In what way am I related? Um, and so, I mean, it's bizarre. And then I always think of things like, you know, let's say for a second that the biblical, like the not the biblical, but the modern idea of hell is real, right? This whole Dante's
mhm,
Inferno. And then I think about God, and then I think about a relationship, and it starts to sound abusive at that point. It's God. I mean, what kind of relationship is there in which the other person that you're trying to relate to knows everything about you, um, made you, and then is also a judge over you? It seems to me like Christianity might be trying to use this idea of a relationship as a way of sort of softening the God of the Old Testament, maybe. But it still it just sort of rings bizarre to me as to in what way do I have anything to relate to you? I suppose if there was a God that, you know, uh, maybe wasn't
Can I
perfect.
interject really quick?
Sure.
So, what would I say if God, so maybe, okay, so relatable in, I guess I want to just like confirm on what you're trying to say. Like, so you feel like you can't relate to God because we are human and He is God and He already knows everything anyways? Is that kind of where the relation is hard for you? Just on a basic level. I understand like reading the Bible and things like that, and you have some problems with that, but just on a
Yeah.
relational basis.
Correct. So,
Hmm.
yeah, as you even mentioned that it seems like it's one-sided. Uh, that's the part that I struggle with.
So, so I guess like what I can say for me, and I can only speak on mine and also like other testimonies that I've heard through other people is, when we look at the Bible too is another thing that I feel like if I would have read the Bible without having a relationship with God, I would have taken the Bible way differently. I feel like the Bible, you have to have a relationship with God to understand like why he would do something like that. Because, people do things for valid reasons, bad things in quotation marks that we view bad for good reasons, like self-defense, et cetera, et cetera. Not saying that that's God. I'm just saying, don't know what I'm saying. I got lost on what I was saying. Oh no, it was a good point. Dang it. Bring me back. What was the main topic? I'm sorry. You
Kind of like a
said,
greater picture thing. So, like with the amount of knowledge that God would have, that even the bad things that He's doing, if you have a
ah,
relationship with Him, you'd be
mm-hmm,
able to
mm-hmm,
understand what those
mm-hmm.
things are and that they're towards some kind of greater good, maybe?
Yes, yes, yes. And then with the hell situation, so like I know people get really hung up on that, and that was definitely something that I really struggled with, just even before I believed in God, because my dad was Jewish. And then when I started to, learn about God and all that kind of stuff, and it said that you have to believe in Jesus, and he didn't he didn't believe in anything, but he didn't believe in Jesus either. I'm like, so you automatically go to hell? I was very confused. And I feel like that's where, when I started having a relationship with God, he was able to, like, start to guide me through the Bible. And when I would have questions like with the whole Jewish, he doesn't believe in, I know you guys probably know that they are the chosen ones, but I didn't even know that simple fact that like they just like kind of, in other words, this is how I viewed it. Like, so they got like a free pass to not go to hell. It was very confusing. But as I started learning about God and who he was and leaning on him to answer those questions instead of people, and then waited for the answer. So, like, and I still do this. So, I might have a question about something and I may not get that answer from God for weeks. So that's another thing that a lot of people are not willing to wait for an answer, especially in our society and the way that we have instant gratification and stuff like that. To wait for an answer from God is very hard for us. It's hard for me. And so when we don't get like those answers right away, we feel like we're not getting those answers, that we're not being heard, that there are no answers for that. When I believe if we truly want to know the truth about something, God has done this for me many times throughout my walk. He gives me that answer, and a lot of the times in ways that I didn't even see it coming. Sometimes I'll forget about even wanting to know that answer until he shows me something, or I watch a video, or I read in the Bible, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and then I have clarification on that. But I don't think that we can get that without having a relationship with God. Just like if we have a relationship with a regular person and we need clarification on something. Why did you do this? Or why was this that way? Why did you, make that decision? You have to go to that person. And then, yeah, like in real life, yes, people usually have to give you that answer right here, right now, but God is different and God will give it to you when you are ready. So that's the other thing is we tend to like get in our way and think we're ready for an answer, and we might not be getting that answer because we're not ready to receive it either. And we have a really hard time on waiting as humans, for sure.
Yeah. So the where I was going earlier
Hmm.
was that I suppose I could entertain the idea of having a relationship with a higher power, right?
Hmm.
Something that maybe just is very similar to me, but just has a lot more power, but also has some faults, and maybe needs to have a relationship with somebody else in order to fill some sort of a void in the same way that I would want to have a relationship with somebody else in order to fill a void. And
Hmm.
but it just seems to me like if there is this all powerful, all knowing, perfect God, that it seems like they would have everything and lack nothing. Like there would
Hmm.
be nothing that God would ever need to have. And so then it seems like it almost it's bizarre to me to think of God really wanting anything, because to want something means that you don't have it. And so what is it that a God like that doesn't already have? And so that's the part where I struggle. I suppose there's, um, many ways that you can view the term relationship. I guess the way that it comes across to me when people talk about it is the way that we typically think about relationships, like friendships, or how we work with each other and how we try to understand each other. But when the other party has all the power, is responsible for you existing, and knows everything there is to know about you, it just seems like it's um, me trying to figure you out, but you already know everything there is to know about me. And I guess it's just I would have
Hmm.
to adopt sort of a bizarre view of what relationship is in that sense. Of course, depending on what version of relationship I'm
Right.
using, but.
So there's a few things. So a couple of things. Why I want to touch on this because this was a really big question for me, and I feel like I've gotten some kind of answer. I'm not going to say I know for sure, but so God is explained as being love. And that God is this essence of love. And I believe that when he says we are an image of him, I think that were just we had to be made. So we are an expression of his love. This is, and I would have to go into my Bible study stuff to show where like scripture does back some of this up that I'm saying. This is some revelations and praying, and this is just what I feel like God has told me, that we are an expression that had to happen because he is love. There has to be something to love, and then we are made in that image, and therefore we have the capability to love back, because real love, you have to, there goes in that choice, that Christians always talk about, but that is ultimately really true. Like regardless if he knows, everything, we still have to be able to have that choice to love back, or therefore it is not love. So I think that we are actually created because he is love. We are the expression of God's love. And that is why he came and died for us again, so we can have that relationship, etc. And that is why sin, something that is outside of God, that God cannot be a part of, because from what the Bible and what we believe as God, he is outside of everything. Therefore, he as an essence created everything. And I feel like a lot of like what is explained in like creation story is just a dumbed down version so we can kind of comprehend how this all happened. That's my true honest opinion.
Mm.
I think that just God in his essence, like it's a lot to learn. I think it's a lifelong relationship with God to learn and to, and I think people put their hands on everything too and distorted a lot of things. So to make it harder for us to have that relationship with God, for sure. And I don't think
So
it's people. I think it's the enemy. Let me get that straight. Just saying.
sure,
Hey,
I could.
everybody. Can I just say thank you to everybody for all the taps, any gifts? And I'm happy to have everybody here. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. So I think one thing that I would push back on there is that um, it seems to me like what you're saying is that God is this essence of love. And so he had to create us because that's the loving thing to do. But that makes it seem like it's sort of an obligation out of his nature. So, of course,
No, I
God
think
has
that
to
we
be.
we were created because of that. Like there was no like I don't think it was a choice. I think we were
Exactly.
created because he is love. Okay, okay, just making sure.
Right.
Sorry.
No.
Go
Yeah.
ahead. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay.
So it for God, it
Hmm.
seems like because he has this essence, because that's what makes him God, is this loving character.
Hmm.
He, if I can just maybe shorten this, so it seems like what's being said here is that in order for us to have any valuable sense of what loving is, we have to have the choice.
Hmm.
But how is it that God can truly love us if he's only doing it because it's obligatory to his nature?
Because he's already love. So therefore, like he's already made the choice. And therefore he already proved to us too by sending Jesus again or coming down. That's even a little bit more of a different topic too.
But yeah,
But
but it
yeah,
wouldn't
so that
be.
was
Yeah,
another representation of the love was
sure.
Jesus again. He's choosing us again. He's showing us again that even if he is love, he would still choose us.
Sure, but it doesn't really sound like it is a free choice. It's something that he must do because that's what a perfectly loving God does. So, in other words, God
Hmm.
is love in his essence. So, therefore, everything that he does must be loving. So, it seems like he has no free choice in being anything other than what he is, which is this
Yeah.
all loving being. And so, if he
Hmm.
is the standard, and yet he has no choice to be anything other than what he is, why is it necessary that I have to have some sort of choice to be loving in order for it to actually be authentic when God himself, who is the ultimate standard, is just love and has to be so because that's what he is?
That's a great question. And I've never thought about this or anything, but what I feel like the answer is he did at first. The garden, we didn't have to choose. You know what I mean? He did make us at first to not have a choice. Like we did have a choice on sin, but like he made it so we just loved each other. There was a relationship there until we chose different. See, God already chose us. We were already chosen. But when we chose sin instead of God, that's where the disconnect comes. And I truly believe that the garden story is all of our story, meaning, like, if every single one of us was in that position, if I was in Eve's position, if you were in Adam's position, we would all have made that same choice. We would have always chose not God, pretty much. And so that is where our story has to come reconcile. And that's why God had to do everything that he did in the Bible was through love. Even the stuff that we see that does not look like love, it was through love so that every single thing had to happen so that we could be ultimately reconciled back with God. It's just like one big circle because we're trying to get back to where he ultimately already created us. We were created to be with God in relationship, but we chose to step out of that relationship, not God. So then because we did that, God had to make another way so that we could be back with him in showing us that he chooses us again and again and again. To be honest, like that's what I get out of that story. Huggy, if you
But I
want
think
to re-request, I didn't get to accept you. I don't know if you did that on purpose. Sorry, go ahead.
no, you're good. And Seven, jump in here anytime. I feel like I'm just dominating the
You're
conversation, but
fine. You're fine. This
You're
is a
better
good
at this than I am,
conversation.
so
Stella. You're better at this.
No, stop.
so
I love talking to
it's
both of y'all.
yeah. It seems as if though there would have been something. It just seems better to me. Like it would have been better had God just created His creation in the garden with no capacity to do evil. Now, one might say, well, that then everything that they do isn't really good because they don't have the choice to do evil. But the thing is, neither does God. God cannot do something that is against His nature because
Hmm.
that would be, breaking a law of logic. If God is pure love, if He is pure goodness and has no ability to do something that is horrible, then it seems like it would be just as fine, or not illogical, but better for him to create beings that didn't have to experience evil and suffering. We could still be good, just because he made us to be good.
Hmm. I agree. I agree.
Because then
This
it creates a
is,
tension. It creates a tension, right? Because
it does.
if the evil that exists is something that is necessary to bring about a greater good, then it almost makes it seem like the evil is praiseworthy.
I don't think that evil has to be for good. I think that would be probably a whole completely different um topic, I guess, like the fall of Satan and why that happened. And I think that those are still things that I'm meditating on. Like I said, I'm not perfect. I just want to like try to bring, you guys and myself the most authentic answers that I can possibly give through, the praying that I do and the meditation and the relationship that I have with God. And that is a big question of why was the devil created in the first place? Why did you have to create that angel? That did fall. And a lot, this isn't like the full answer, but a lot of what I always get is that, pride is one of the biggest downfalls to love as well. Like to be shown that they're, I guess, like, I don't know. I guess like I do see their point on like why evil had to be for a choice, but I feel like because we were already destined to make that choice, like when we were created, however that may have been, whether it's like directly how the Bible says, which I really kind of feel like it's just dumbed down, like I said, for us humans to understand. But that at that moment, God knew when we were created that we were going to fall. And therefore, maybe He created this whole scenario so that in the end he would fall first and then we could then be reconciled back to him, because there has to be some kind of domino effect for him to be able to reconcile us back. Because if and I do understand, like, why couldn't he just create us and maybe he could not, like if he is an essence of love and God cannot do anything, just like,
Mhm.
I do believe God is all powerful, but I don't believe like he's a magician, like can make things, that aren't possible. So like everything's possible for God, that's possible for God. So
Yeah.
if we are created the way we were created, I really feel like there wasn't another option, and that this was the only option to truly love fully and have a full relationship with God like we're supposed to. It had to all happen the way that it does. And I know that it is hard to accept that. It's hard to but
Honestly,
go ahead.
I would agree with you that God could not do anything that is logically contradictory. Like he could only, when we say he's all powerful, we only mean that
Hmm.
he could do what is logically possible. Like God can't, create the stone so heavy that he can't lift it. That's just ridiculous.
Right. But our
God can.
logic to God's logic, I think, is two different things too. So I think we can get hung up on that too.
Oh, well,
Yeah, I have a
I
problem
don't
with
think
that.
that that's true, but yeah, I
Mm,
mean, I think
okay.
logic is just logic, but
You do, you
um,
do. Okay, I was just
Yeah.
wondering.
I mean, I think if you know you're the creator, and
Mhm.
this is about as far as I go into you know internal critiques on this. But if you're the creator, I don't see any problem with contravening the laws of logic. I don't see why that should be an issue. I think that's very much our a human perspective, and I think it's reality. I don't think it is possible um, not follow the laws of logic or to go against the laws of logic.
But what
But
are the
if
laws
you're a
of
creator,
logic, though, Seven? I'm a little confused on what even are the laws, though. Is that, do you mean like gravity and all that kind of stuff? Like, is that what you mean?
N- No,
the three
like,
big ones:
yeah,
non-contradiction,
right.
and I
Ex-
always forget the other two.
Identity and
Identity, excluded middle. Yeah,
excluded middle. Yeah.
yeah.
And I have to
So
go
for
a little
instance,
bit more in depth on what those are. Just real quick, can you
yeah,
give me a little?
sure. So, like, the law of identity would just state that something is what it is. It's not something that's not what it is. So,
Okay.
to use an example, an apple would be an apple, right? It's
Hmm.
not a non-apple. Everything that makes it the apple is what it is. Okay, it's basically it's tautological in nature, so it's something that's true, and it's in the form in which it's presented. It's basically A is equal to A.
Hmm. I
One
have a
is
question
one
about
is
that though, because we can bend the laws of logic though then with science, because we can
No,
make hybrids, etc. Yeah?
no, you can't bend the laws of
No.
logic. No,
So
no.
so that would still be logical since science is involved that we can create, like hybrids and things like that of fruits and vegetables and all that kind of stuff and
Well,
animals
but
too.
there's nothing. Yeah, but that just means that whatever the hybrid is what it is. So if you create a
Okay.
hybrid fruit of some sort, it is that fruit, right? It's
Okay.
equal to its thing. Yeah.
Got you. Okay.
No.
essentially, we have no demonstrated examples of anything breaking the laws of logic to date.
So in other words,
Okay.
yeah, and then like the law of non-contradiction, God couldn't he couldn't exist and also not exist at the same time and in the same
Mm.
way. That
Okay.
doesn't make sense. Yeah. It's
Okay.
like when
Okay.
people I've heard people say that God created himself, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make sense because in order to create oneself, one has to exist. And so
Mm.
it's just these are things that, these are sort of the inferences or the rules that we use in order to make sense of the world, to use reason. So I agree with you that God can do only that which is logically possible, but I suppose I could be convinced that he would if he had to create the world in which he did, like you said
Hmm.
earlier. But I guess the argument that would need to be given to me is where is the contradiction? Where is the break in logic for him to create something that wouldn't have been this way? Would there be any
Mm.
logical contradiction with him creating a world in which, perhaps we had free choice to do uh, that which is only good in the same way that he does. Now, some might be saying, well, that's just creating another God. But then you run
Mm.
into a problem of, is the good that's created in this world just another part of God? Is it a part of him or is he creating himself? And so we run into some difficult questions, I think, but it's
Well, and I
interesting to talk.
also think that we don't put in, so I agree with, I understand what you're saying with like, why did he create? But we are in a world that was created with, an enemy or an evil that is like our adversary that's always constantly making us want to do wrong, pretty much. And I feel like in the logical base, we're not including that though, that we have we do have, like, in my, worldview, is we have somebody or some things or spirits, etc., that are constantly trying to be deceptive, trying to make us think things that are not true, etc. And I think that's like a lot of our science falls into that. I'm not going to lie. I do think there's a lot of good science, but I think a lot of our science does fall into that deceptive category, and that we do have somebody that has been living way longer than any human being on this earth, that knows God way better than, and this is if we're looking at it from the viewpoint of God, and that he is real, that we have an adversary that knows the Lord way more than we do, knows scripture, etc., has been, our enemy for who knows how long, and has been planning this. So when we look at a worldview like that, we are completely not thinking about having an enemy, though. If we have an enemy, and let's remove, like, okay, we don't believe in God, but we do look at a worldview that we have an enemy, then that does change logic just a little bit. And hi, Void. Good to have you up. We just like to keep it respectful around here, and you're welcome to join the combo.
Nice. Hi.
And how old
Yeah,
are you? Just so
I'm
we
25.
know.
I'm
Okay, okay.
25.
And are you a believer, non-believer, if you don't
No,
mind?
not a believer.
Okay,
Um,
good to have you up. But solo, real quick, what do you feel about that? Like, if logic in the logical sense isn't taking into account, and that's just going off of the God view, that there is a enemy that's constantly trying to veer us the wrong way, wouldn't some of our logic ultimately not be true?
So I'm not necessarily sure I'm understanding
Okay,
what what about an enemy would make something would make one of these rules of logic not true.
that he has created systems and deceptions throughout time to make us feel like the things we're taught through science, through, just even our own brains are under attack. And that is hard to, like, and I don't mean like as far as, like, magical. Like, I know we get into our heads and we think of like movies and stuff, but I mean, like, we are always being tempted and veered, and we always have a choice whether to do right or wrong in any situation. And I do believe that in all of those situations, we have to be aware that there's somebody waiting for our downfall, and
Yeah.
that could make us view life differently. If we don't know that he's there, don't acknowledge that he's there, then logic is going to be a lot different, is what I was, I guess, trying to say.
Well, once again, I think you might be operating on some sort of perhaps idiosyncratic view of what
What?
logic is.
No word. You can't use big words with me, friend. I don't know what that
So I think
means.
so. In other words, I think the way that you're using the word logic is being used
Wrong.
differently.
Okay,
No,
possibly.
I wouldn't say wrong, just different than the way that I'm using it. But one
Okay.
thing, like if you could understand one thing, so if I could give you an example, I think the problem of evil is a logical problem. So if God is an all good God, then it doesn't seem like an all good God would be able to create something that is not good. And the devil
Mm,
is not
I
good.
see.
So therefore, it seems like we have a contradiction there. If God is all good and creates something that is not good, well, we would
Hmm.
either have to do one of two things, call that a contradiction, or we would have to look at the thing as not good as actually being good.
Ah, I see. That's a very interesting way to look at it. I would have to do some more thinking and stuff on that, because that is an interesting view on, if God is all good, how did he create something that turned out ultimately not to be good? But let me let me hit you with this side of thinking. What if it all had to be to then reconcile us again. I guess that's where I keep coming back to like the evil. Like we were always, I don't know. That's a good question. We've come to a point where I'm gonna be like, I don't know the answer to that one.
So I
You
guess
know,
I
and
guess
I'm only human, guys. I'm only
no,
human.
no, but these are just things. These are just things to think about. This isn't me
Hmm.
like trying to put you in a difficult spot. I don't have
No,
all
I
the
know.
answers. But I think the fear is the more we start to put God in this box of he had to, because it's necessary or it's part of his nature, the more we turn him into less of a personal being and more into something that would just sort of resemble nature itself, something that just has to operate according to a specific law. And then therefore we have each cause and effect, whether that be natural or spiritual, is just as equally valid as the other. And then we're sort of living in a universe that kind of just seems like it's based off of a nature, whether that be natural and supernatural. So it doesn't really seem to me like the supernatural is adding anything to our current predicament, other than the fact that it's sort of multiplying causes beyond necessity. So I'd say that's probably why I take more of a what I consider to be a parsimonious view to this whole idea of gods and spirits and whatnot. It's because I think that even if you were to invent a spiritual realm, you're going to have to eventually think of cause and effect within that realm. Is there any cause and effect? And if they're not, then is things just completely random, or are they just completely set? And then it just starts to start. The more you try to make sense of it, the more it starts to look like the nature that we actually live in.
I see where you can see that too. This is definitely a view of things that, I can see where that can get really confusing too. Because I guess, like, I don't know, because we aren't God. And maybe God cannot create God, of course, because he is God, but we are made in his image. Therefore, we can, you know, love like him, and almost like we are the only creation too that it talks about that can like actually create like him as well. Like not necessarily like create a being, but like create art and have like that kind of things where like the angels were not given that, etc. I still like I guess like logically that would make sense that everything had to play out the way it did, because if God is love and love has to be a choice and he made that choice, there has to be something that we have to choose between. If everything is all love and everything is all good, then there is no choice. So there is, and that is where I feel like logic, I guess with the way that you're using it, I feel like can be detrimental to us. I feel like that's more of like the knowledge of
Can
good and evil and the tree. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
can I try? I think if I'm right, Kara, what you're saying is that if there is some kind of what do you I think you call it, the enemy. If there is an
Hmm.
enemy out there, and the deception is that our impression of logic, of what logic is, and the basic laws of logic and how it works, that's essentially could be a deception. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, 100%. Yes.
Okay,
Hmm.
okay. So I guess this is where, see, this is the thing that I suppose, I mean, we started talking off this conversation about, people having different perspectives and, being able to talk about those different perspectives. And
Hmm.
I think I did say that I don't have an issue with people having different perspectives. Now, my bottom line is harm. So harm
Hmm.
when it comes to people, and I mean harm in the real world, or
Hmm.
harm. Okay.
Hmm. Yes,
And
yes.
I guess when it comes, and this is the thing which concerns me the deepest, and I'm being very emphatic about this, is that I
Hmm.
know you pretty well. I know how kind
Hmm.
and caring you are. and I know that you're a rebel Christian, which I love as well. And
Yeah.
I, I think I think there comes a point where the thinking about reality and what composes reality and how we decide how that reality is constructed. I think there is a line at a point at which harm does actually start happening. And I think we're at that point. So when we start saying reality is not reality, logic is not logic, I think it very closely behind, that's where harm comes. And generally, the harm comes to those who are most vulnerable. And that's something
Mhm.
which I feel very strongly about. And that's why I love having these conversations. But that kind of thinking is what concerns me the deepest. And I mean that so very respectfully, but
I see.
also
Hmm.
very emphatically
I
that
can
I
see
have a
where you
real
feel
issue
that
with that.
way. Yes, I can see, and especially with, like a lot of the Christians, like we talked about. Hi, Zach. Good to have you guys. We just respectful convo, always welcome. And everybody can like chime in respectfully whenever. I just want to say, before I forget though, what I was talking about just seven, is yes, I can see where like when you see a Christian and they are saying that they know God, etc., but you don't have that relationship with God, I can see where this thinking could be extremely harmful. And I think we can see that in history, where if I think that we can use religion and religious texts and everything like that to gain power and all that kind of stuff, but I don't think that that's a God problem. I think that's a human problem. And that's where, like, learning how to communicate with God and learning to listen to God for Him to guide you and learn about what the real world is. Because I think that when we say real world, when we look at it from a secular point of view, we then disregard that there is any spiritual realm that is, in influence. So there goes like the influences. I feel like we are all being influenced by something, and we've talked about this in our conversations as well. And I do believe that the enemy is influencing through the spiritual realm all the time, and that we see those influences in our physical realm. Um, I don't know if that answered the question, but yeah.
I
Yeah,
am.
I think it does. I, and there is a conflict there. Sorry, Zach. I'll be very brief.
No, no, no.
Hmm.
I'm sorry. I'm
Um,
sorry.
um, there is a conflict there, and I don't know. I guess what it is that you feel that the enemy is trying to achieve. But what I have seen, kind of, yeah, like you said,
Can
kind
I
of
tell you
over
real quick?
history.
the
Yeah.
enemy's the enemy's goal is to get you not to believe in God, period, point blank. It doesn't matter how he gets it, but if you don't believe in God, then he's won. You don't have to follow him necessarily and think he's real or be a Satanist.
Mm,
If you don't believe in
mm.
God, that's his goal, and then he won. So it doesn't matter.
Okay. That's very kind of, it's self validating, right? And
Hmm.
so that in itself is a problem.
Okay.
And my issue with it, and really, I genuinely don't
Hmm.
have any issue with, and I don't direct this purely towards theism either. For me,
Hmm.
it's an issue with any irrational beliefs whatsoever. That there comes a point, generally speaking, where the spread of those beliefs start harming people. And I realize that you see the harm as um, not people not believing in God for whatever reason. I don't think there is a God, and
Hmm.
so because of that, when I see that harm being inflicted on generally the most vulnerable, then yeah, I have a real issue with that, and I have to push back on it every single time, and I feel
So,
that
what
very,
if
very
the
strongly.
enemy is using those people to make you look at religion or God, the Bible, in a negative way? Therefore, you don't believe. That's what I mean. Like by
Uh,
using other people to get them to use the religion in a negative way is a great way to make people not believe in God.
sure. I mean, all I've got is my perceptions and the world around
Mm-hmm.
me, my
Mm-hmm.
observations.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't think negatively about religion. I think negatively about harm. That's the thing that I think negatively about. I don't think negatively about people. I feel negatively about actions. That's for damn sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, what then in that case could not be justified by your position? What actions could not be justified? What harms would it be impossible to be justified by using the logic that you're using?
I don't think if anybody harms another individual in God's name, I don't feel like that's God. I mean, that's
Hmm.
my personal opinion. I know that there are, stories in the Bible that I'm still, working on trying to figure out why those stories are in there for one, why those, because the Bible is thousands of years old and it cherry picks stories throughout people, so those stories that were put in the Bible apparently are significant for whatever reason. So that's always like my first go to is why is this story in the Bible significant? Why would this even be put in the Bible? Why would something that talks about slavery or, the murdering of multiple people, women, children, like why in the world would that be put in the Bible? What is the significance of that to even be relevant? Do you know what I mean? So that, and some of those things I'm still working on. Those are things that were brought to my attention that, like, in that
Yeah,
candy cotton religion, we're not taught,
sure.
So this is all like
Uh,
some things, when you look at it from the way that you guys present, it is,
well,
something that
here's
I
the thing
can
about that
see.
is
Yeah.
I actually I don't have an issue with that stuff. I think I'm a I think I'm a rebel atheist,
Oh,
to be
you're a
honest.
rebel atheist. I got you. That's why we get along,
Yeah, I
Seven.
think we're kind of alike like that. So
Mhm.
I don't have an issue with the problem of evil. I don't think it's a valid reason not to believe in the existence of a God. I don't have a problem with God being contradictory to the laws of logic and things like that. But it's when people are believing what we are observing around us is not reality, when
Mhm.
harms occur because of that. That's what I have the issue with. So when
Mhm.
I hear somebody who I know is kind and gentle and caring and nurturing and thoughtful and intelligent, saying, yeah, the stuff we see around us, that's actually not real. Okay, that's the stuff,
Mhm.
this, you only think that it's real because there's a mystery force that we cannot demonstrate acting against us. And I actually don't have a problem with somebody thinking that in itself, if it's contained, but it never is. It never is. And that frightens me.
Mhm. And I can see where if you don't have a relationship with God, that would be where you would land. And that's why, like, I always stress, like, and that has been something that, like, I've even had to learn in my walk with God is that when I want answers, I've got to go to God first. And then when I'm reading the Bible and I'm reading stuff about God, that I need to go to God first, that I need to be directed by God to understand because like I said, I don't. And I also think another big thing that people try to do with the Bible is use it as a history book or like, and that's not what it was intended to be. Many times in the Bible, it talks many times that the Bible was made to teach us how to be closer to God, how to treat one another, and how to be good humans. Like that multiple times in the Bible says that this is what this text is for. And I think us using it in like a historical form or trying to read it in like not as that can really hinder the understanding of the book as well, I guess, too, is another big thing that I think has happened over time. But I do want to give Void a chance to talk if you'd like, if you have anything to say. If you don't and you want to just hang out, perfectly fine.
I'm actually busy with something real quick. So,
Okay, no problem. No problem. But yeah, so I would say that there is harm that has come from people using the text in a wrong way. Yes, I believe that there's harm that comes and has come throughout history because of, Christianity. But that is still, again, people using the name of Christianity that I believe have zero relationship with God. Zero. And if you have zero relationship with God, I do not feel like you can get the full picture of the Bible or God, and of course, But that is another thing is I feel like a lot of the misconceptions and stuff come from, that aspect.
It's so interesting because I feel like we are saying the exact same thing, but just flipped
On the
over
other
the other
side.
side.
Right? I
It's
know.
so
Yes.
interesting.
It's really funny because a lot of like when I hear stories about like atheists and non-believers, the way that they went out of Christianity is a very similar on the way I got into Christianity, which is very funny that I took the complete opposite away from it. And that's why I always say it's about perspective. We can both be watching the same thing happen, but because from where you're standing, from where you can see things differently than I can. You know what I mean? And I might think that that situation played out a different way from where I was standing, but because you were standing on the other side, you saw the truth. You saw the whole a different side of it. And I feel like that is definitely something that comes with, relationship and things like that as our perspective, changes.
Hmm. I think that's what it comes down to is the relationship for you, isn't it? That's
Mm,
the only difference between us
mhm.
is the relationship. Hmm.
Yeah.
We're going to need
And
to
I
explore that further at some
and
point.
the only way that I was really able to obtain that relationship, like honest to God, I had to put my pride down. I had to put everything that I thought was true down and give room for if there is God, if there is truth in that, to be able to be seen. And then I had to give it time too because I'm one of those people that need that confirmation, need that. Am I crazy? Because a lot of times I think I'm crazy, to be quite honest. And I need that confirmation. Hey, you're not crazy. So that is something that I really wholeheartedly put myself down because I knew that I needed something more, regardless of where we are in our life, and what we're going through. I was in jail, the story, and I knew that what I was doing was not the right way and I needed help. And if there was a God out there to help me feel better, whatever we're going through, anxiety or problems or whatever that thing that we're searching for to make us whole, if that was in God, I wanted it. And I needed to be fully allowing of that to happen. And I think that's where we get in our way a lot. Like, and I don't think in my personal relationship and stories I've heard, when you honest to God, come to God in that way, He will not let you down. And that is my experience and other people's experience. And that any person that I feel like really knows God, it is about relationship. And that's why I think so many people get so disheartened in these because everybody Christians come up and say it's relationship, and it truly I believe is relationship. And that is what Jesus was telling us when he came here. Was this is about relationship, not about how much you can do or how much you can quote or how the world looks at you. Are you, the most righteous, etc. Because we've learned
It,
throughout
it,
the years that that is not what makes people good people.
It's so interesting though because I mean I've listened to a lot of these conversations and I always
Hmm.
listen to two-sided conversations. I have no interest in listening to either somebody one person just speaking about theism or
Hmm.
another person
Hmm.
speaking about atheism. I just don't have. I
Hmm.
never have. I always wanted to listen to conversations or debates, and I've heard so many people say I tried for years to build up that relationship, and it just never happened for me. I've heard
Hmm.
other people say I basically tripped over one day and fell ass backwards into a relationship with God, you know?
That's definitely me
And
a little bit, yes. A little
and
bit.
hear other people's, I hear about people who were vehemently atheist and just couldn't stop themselves becoming theistic. And I hear about people who are theistic and can't stop themselves. Like literally, I mean, you've heard the phrase: the road to
Mhm.
atheism is lined with well read Bibles.
Mm,
So it just seems to be so individual, and
mm.
that there's no patterns there, that I find it hard to accept what you're
It
saying.
is individual. That is where it is we can individually have a relationship with God. It can't be a whole same kind of situation to have somebody can be fake as hell and be friends to everybody to their face, and treat everybody the same but not have any type of real relationship with anybody, you know what I mean? So I feel like a real relationship with somebody is individualized. That's like the same thing we were talking about on how to get to know God. Is like he's a person, we need to get to know him. And yes, he knows us, but see, we do not know God. And when we start to learn who God is, we actually start to learn more about ourselves. At least that's how it was for me. Was that the more I got to know God, the more I was able to see myself for the good and the bad, and then able to, with God's help, create, something that, he had planned for me. So that is like the other thing that I feel like when we are in line with God, then we are in line with his purpose and life becomes easier. Even if it looks like from the outside, I've had all of my problems and stuff, but internally it's easier when I have God there guiding me because he has the best plan. He knows what I need to get through this more than I do myself. And I think that's the greatest thing that I've come to with the relationship with God is actually learning more about myself than I knew prior, and being able to look at myself in a more like transparent way, I guess. And I feel like that's with God's help.
That's super interesting. I have, well, for one, I have so many problems with that. So many. Um, but also, I've been
Oh,
speaking an
seven.
awful lot. So I'm going to jump down so that I
You're
can give
fine.
other people a chance to
Okay.
speak.
No, it was a
But I love
great
you loads, buddy,
conversation. Love you too. It was so good to talk to you. Good to see you. And we'll talk
and
soon for
catch up with
sure.
you again, okay?
Yes,
I'll be listening,
definitely.
so don't be talking shit about
Okay.
me, okay?
Okay, I might. I might. No, I'm just kidding, kidding. Love you, friend. I don't know. Should I drop you down? I don't know how to do any of this stuff. Hold on, seven. How do I do this, guys? How do I drop
You click
somebody? Oh,
you
I
click
see.
on his, yeah.
Okay, and then disconnect. And now? Okay, there we go. I feel so bad for dropping you. But I
I'm surprised there's any air left in the room after he's been here sucking it all in.
Oh, see, it ain't even me talking. It's so loud. I'm just kidding. That was a great convo. I think that we don't talk about that a lot as like, Christian atheists on like what that relationship looks like because we like to glide over that. But that was a really good convo. And I liked it. I probably just heads up, probably got like 10, 15 minutes because my little dude's up. So we're gonna see how well he's gonna be. But he's sleeping. I don't know if you can see it, but no, you can't. But he's on my tablet. He's he's up and playing right now. But I really appreciate all, I just want to say, appreciate all of the likes and the taps and any gifts and all of my guests, whether you talked or not. I really appreciate you coming up and having those conversations with me. Okay, go ahead, Solo. Sorry.
Oh, I didn't have anything else.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
So what,
if something comes up, I don't know. Do you have any questions for me? I've sort of raised
maybe.
some. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I guess like I do have a question for you because I don't think I've ever heard your like story. Were you grew up atheist? Did you have Christianity in your life, and how did that look for you? If you don't mind sharing, like how you transitioned.
Yeah. So to make a very long story short, I
Hmm.
my dad's a pastor. I grew up in a Christian
Oh.
home. Um, was a part of Christianity for the better part of my life. Um, always had doubts. Always had questions. And I was always told that it was okay to have those doubts and questions, and that who better to ask than God.
Hmm.
And but just after thinking through a lot of them, it just seemed to start to resonate with me better that this isn't really true. Um, and being honest with myself. At first, I felt like I had to have some sort of an argument, like I had to have some sort of justification for why it isn't so. And it's kind of bizarre to think about sometimes. Like, I'm not sure that's how beliefs always work. Um, sometimes I feel as if though we have beliefs or we have,
No, no,
non-beliefs, and
but
we don't necessarily always know the ins and the outs of everything. We have to sort of work through
hmm.
it. But I'd gotten to a point where I was just like, well, this doesn't really seem to be true or real to me. And the best way to describe it, it'd be like if someone were to walk up to you and say that they have the power to to just to fly. If someone came up to you and said, "Look, this morning I jumped over the Empire State Building."
Wow.
I mean, just if they're
Right.
just going to tell me that, it's like I don't believe you.
Yeah, I feel
you know,
I feel that.
And I suppose that maybe I don't have a philosophical argument to show you how what you're claiming is false. I'm sorry, it doesn't represent anything in which the context that I live in, and so therefore I don't really have any reasonable justification to say that that is something that is that I believe, right? And then I also, like, just through this whole process, I started to realize that I couldn't choose my beliefs, and I think you agree. I could be
Mm,
wrong, but those are just things that we're
yes and no,
convicted
but
of.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I see you on the camera screen there. I just saw your dog. I
Yes.
listened to your voice. I have all these confirmations that you are existing. It's not that I'm choosing to believe that you're
Mm,
real. It's just you're just as real as anything could be to me. And so I feel as if though my that's just the way that my brain works. And so
yeah.
there was nothing that truly convicted me to believe that there is a God. And so it took a while for me to get to a point where I could actually say that, because was raised in the church, and therefore there was a
Right.
lot of fear. Right? Am I going to
Hmm.
hell? Am I going to have a terrible life now?
Mm,
And of course, and then I started to think, well, if I were to change my belief just simply based on that, well, that's not really belief. That's just fear. That's just
right.
no different than me having, like, someone who struggles with obsessive compulsive disorder, touching that doorknob 100 times before they actually opening it.
Hmm.
It's a compulsion in order to keep my fear at bay. It's not really actual belief. And so I told myself, and I'll end with this, is that if I am going to end up believing in this, I just wanted it to be authentic. And
Hmm.
so I'm awaiting some sort of an experience or some sort of a confirmation that authenticates it to me.
Well, that's a good place to be. So you're still willing to be open to something like God if he comes to you
Well,
at this
sure. I
point?
mean, yeah, because I mean, I always have to be open to the fact that I could be wrong about anything.
Mm-hmm. That is what is funny because I know that a lot of people in these conversations have talked about fear. And you know that um like that to me is definitely something that motivates people. And I guess when I was like an atheist, and I try to think back to that, when I thought about God in that sense, like I definitely didn't fear, him necessarily. You fear the consequence, right? And I can see where that can be, you know, almost hindering to being able to have a relationship if you're constantly in fear of somebody. You can't have a relationship with somebody you fear, though, like not a real good one, anyways, not in my experience, anyways. So when I was an atheist, like I guess fearing God, I guess like I guess what my ultimate like thought process was, I guess, in the sense of like I definitely am not afraid of if there is no God. You know what I mean? Like, because if we die, then there is nothing, and it's just like when we were born. But what if there is a God? And if there is a God and I am denying him and I'm not giving him the opportunity to prove himself, I guess, in a sense, that I was more afraid of missing the opportunity to know God than like hell itself, I guess, is what my fear was driven on. Is if there is a God and I am, living my whole life without knowing him was more scary to me, I guess, than just dying and never exploring that, you know. I don't know if that made any sense. I was trying to make it make sense.
Um, so I, I guess it sounds like you had sort of a Pascal's logic in there, where if there ends up being no gods, then
Hmm.
everything is just or um, going to be uh, okay. But I guess the problem is that if there was just only one God that we
Hmm.
had to worry about, then I suppose Pascal's wager might make more sense to me, right?
Hmm.
But we have multiple, right? And so um, if I could say, well, you know, the Christian could say, well, if my God doesn't end up being true, then I've got nothing to worry about. Well, you might if there are other gods that have, you know, other realms of suffering, um, for not believing in them.
That's true.
um,
That is true.
even Buddhism, there are some
Hmm.
sects that believe in this place called oh, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a realm of suffering. It would be temporary. It's a part of the wheel of
Yes.
samsara.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I mean, those are things that would be that would be afraid to have to experience. Naraka,
Hmm.
I think. But
Right.
you know, yeah,
Ah.
I understand it. And I'm glad that
Hmm.
you're not afraid of it not being true.
Mm-mm.
Because you definitely don't want to have your I guess belief motivated by fear is okay as long as the fear is justified. You know,
Right, right.
I don't want to fall off a cliff, and so therefore, if I'm
Mm,
walking along in nature and I see that I'm really close to the cliff, then that fear is a good thing because it's saying,
right.
"Hey, get away," because
Hmm.
Um, but I don't want to fear something just because it sounds really, really dreadful and it might
Right.
be a possibility with no further
Hmm.
justification other than just that. So,
Right. Agreed. Because you're not going to really get the point of Christianity if that's the reason you're there. That's for sure. But
yeah.
I do have to go. It was a really good talk. I'm so glad that
Yeah.
you came up and Thanks
Totally.
for also, having that conversation on bats. That was a good conversation, and I appreciate you
Yeah.
coming up. And I feel like people kind of take me wrong because I am a Christian sometimes.
Sure.
But yes, but thank you. And it was good seeing everybody. I appreciate all of the likes. Oh, thank you. All of the roses and just being here and spending time with me really means a lot. And I hope that everybody has a good day. And hopefully, as long as my life stays pretty calm, I'll be here every Saturday around 8:30. It's 10:50 my time right now, if that helps. I think am I Central? Am I Eastern? I have no idea, guys. Sorry, not good with that. But yes, you guys have a wonderful day, and thanks for coming up and talking. And Void, welcome anytime. It was good to have you. I hope
Have a good
everybody
one.
has a good day. Thanks. Bye. Thanks for coming up too, Seven. Have a good day. Bye, Huggy.